I'm sorry, but I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. We don't want to hate and despise one another. In this world there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate, has goose-stepped us into misery and bloodshed. We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. Our knowledge has made us cynical, our cleverness hard and unkind. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness and gentleness. Without these qualities, life will be violent and all will be lost. The aeroplane and the radio have brought us closer together. The very nature of these inventions cries out for the goodness in men, cries out for universal brotherhood, for the unity of us all. Even now, my voice is reaching millions throughout the world, millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people. To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish. Soldiers, don't give yourselves to brutes, men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines, you are not cattle, you are men. You have the love of humanity in your hearts. You don't hate, only the unloved hate, the unloved and the unnatural. Soldiers, don't fight for slavery, fight for liberty. In the 17th chapter of St. Luke it is written, the kingdom of God is within man, not one man nor a group of men, but in all men, in you. You, the people, have the power to create machines, the power to create happiness. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful, to make this life a wonderful adventure. Then in the name of democracy, let us use that power. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world, a decent world, that will give men a chance to work, that will give youth a future and old age a security. By the promise of these things, brutes have risen to power, but they lie. They do not fulfill that promise. They never will. Dictators free themselves, but they enslave the people. Now let us fight to fulfill that promise. Let us fight to free the world, to do away with national barriers, to do away with greed, with hate and intolerance. Let us fight for a world of reason, a world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. Soldiers, in the name of democracy, let us all unite, 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 unite.
If you really demanded something from your political leaders, you would have them literally technically define everything in a peer-reviewed treatment of their approach to revising society technically to resolve the problems of labor, poverty, homelessness, economic collapse, structural corruption. This is what would happen if you had any form of scientific relevance. No candidates do this because it's not based on people actually liking their approach. It's about this haphazard identification with the personality of the issue and the illusions created around it.
The Zeitgeist movement could be summarized as a global sustainability information movement. We seek to spread awareness of the detrimental shortcomings of our current global social models and inform people about what is called a resource-based economy. The word Zeitgeist denotes the cultural aspects, understandings, and values dominant within a certain period of time. The Zeitgeist movement is hence an examination of where we are today and it seeks to create change in the understandings and values that people currently have. The Zeitgeist movement began in 2008. Filmmaker and musician Peter Joseph created a documentary called Zeitgeist Addendum, which was a sequel to a previous documentary he had released, which became a viral phenomenon on the internet. The first Zeitgeist was a cathartic expression of Peter's views on religion, 9/11, and the global banking cartel, with a focus on the Federal Reserve. The first Zeitgeist film wasn't made with any intention to start a social movement. It was simply a subversive, eye-opening documentary which hit the scene and caused a buzz greater than any internet documentary had ever done before it. But since it was so controversial and insightful, people en masse began to wonder, what exactly should we do to deal with a world that's so saturated in corruption and needless suffering? Seeing his film take off farther than he ever expected, Peter decided to make an addendum to his first film, in which he went into a broader examination of the dominant institutions of our time, as well as explaining in greater detail the mechanics of money creation and regulation. It also didn't just point out the endless flaws, rather it illuminated what he contends are the root causes of social problems, and offered up a solution. The solution was laid out by Jacques Fresco, a scientist, industrial designer, and social engineer. He spent almost his entire life dedicated to inventing and designing tools, structures, even entire cities. Jacques, along with his associate Roxanne Meadows, founded what is called the Venus Project. The Venus Project is a compound in Venus, Florida, where they work and continue to design and create. In the film, Jacques explains what he calls a resource-based economy. He explains it as a sustainable and optimized replacement for a currently unsustainable economic model. He also elaborates on how the train of thought behind a resource-based economy can be extended to other facets of society. He contends it can solve a lot of social problems because it's based on a scientific, ground-up approach. This approach is what dictates decision-making, as opposed to the opinionated, political, and ideological-based decision-making dominant today. At the end of Zeitgeist Addendum, Peter threw out the suggestion that if these ideas reverberated with the public, then they should join together to create a mass movement for social change and betterment. And they did. In less than 3 years, the Zeitgeist movement has over 500,000 members and chapters across the globe. And growing. We are a completely non-violent information movement that seeks to reorient the values dominant today. We aim to educate people about the current state of global affairs and inform them about an alternative socioeconomic model termed a resource-based economy. Our goal is to collect critical mass awareness as the dominant controlling institutions of our day continue to fail and collapse from their own shortcomings, and an informed public can begin to naturally guide itself towards a social model that's sustainable and equitable by design, not simply by ideological declarations. We commonly accomplish this in a number of ways that include, but are not limited to, the following: forums, film screenings, public lectures with Q&As, town hall meetings and discussions, radio shows and blogs, local festivals featuring socially conscious music, writing, and visual artistry, local access TV shows, general saturation of the internet with media of all types, an annual simultaneous global awareness day known as Z-Day. The movement is a holographic, non-hierarchical, leaderless movement. The movement seeks to create social change on a global level, and while chapters are broken up into groups, it's simply for distinction. Unbalanced power doesn't occur because the very notion actually doesn't fit within the design. People contribute and empower themselves, and they create for the greater good. There are international team chapter coordinators, state chapter teams and coordinators, local city teams and coordinators, and members who simply subscribe to the ideas. To be a member simply means you understand the information and train of thought presented by the movement. To be an activist or coordinator, it simply means you both understand the information and train of thought, and you use your creativity to contribute to the movement and in effect advancing the ideas to the public. It's that simple. No leaders, no commanders, no hierarchy. Just a community of people to freely create and exchange information with. To summarize, a resource-based economy is a ground-up approach to management and distribution of all global resources, geared towards doing so in the most efficient and optimized way possible with the current knowledge and technology available at a time, with the overall goal being to provide the highest standard of living to all people of the planet. If we were to colonize Earth from scratch, having available to us the wealth of modern science, knowledge, and technology that we have now, we likely wouldn't remake the world exactly as it is today. If our intent was to rebuild society and design it so that it was inherently going to produce equality, justice, and sustainability, and an optimized standard of living to all people, we would likely start with a ground-up scientific approach. We would start by surveying the planet and taking into account all of the resources available. We would track weather and other geological activity. We would create a central database that stores all of this information and is connected to information inputs to keep us in constant, real-time knowledge of the state of our Earth and its resources. We'd also track and calculate the renewability of the resources along with the rates of human demands. We could then set up production and distribution centers. As we oriented our production and distribution in the most efficient ways, and we automated as much labor as we could, the price of commodities would continue to drop, since the cost of production is continually decreasing. If it followed that trend, it very well could get to the point where the price of commodities simply becomes negligible. If we didn't have to create products just for the sake of selling things, we could then rather only create products when people actually have a need for them, cutting out massive amounts of waste, not to mention all the nonsensical, manipulative advertising that comes with it. With constant decreasing of price tags, or perhaps the elimination of a price tag altogether, true equality and sustainability can begin as everyone begins to have equal access to the best quality food, water, shelter, and education. Today, how do we know how much resources are available? The answer is the public doesn't truly have access to that kind of information. Surveying for resources is done today. However, it's done by private businesses or corporations who hoard the information to themselves for their own personal advantage, not for the public's interest or advantage. And they do so not because they're bad people per se. They do so because in a market where everyone has to compete to sell products and hence survive, it becomes an inevitability that a small group of people will own and manipulate the most needed commodities to all people. This self-serving, top-down, classist orientation is echoed throughout all of the world, and it's clear to see when you observe a small percentage of people basking in ludicrous amounts of wealth, while literal tens of millions of children starve and thirst to death each year, not because there's not enough food and water, but because they don't have the purchasing power to acquire them. So to eliminate this inevitable outcome of a competition-based market system, you would bypass that idea entirely, declare all the Earth's resources common heritage to all the people, which would enable us to get straight to resource distribution and management. Being able to get straight to the resource management allows us to accurately track and monitor Earth's resources, which also in turn allows us to live in equilibrium with the ability of those resources to replenish themselves. There's another aspect of the market system that prevents us from having an optimum standard of living. Since everyone is competing to sell things in the market, everyone has to cut costs at every possible stage of production in order to be able to sell their products cheaper than their competitors. This not only leads to replacement of workers with machines, outsourcing of jobs to other countries, poor working conditions and wages for workers, it also means the products that are produced are not the highest quality possible and will break down sooner than necessary. If that wasn't bad enough, there's a perverse incentive to ensure products break down quickly, since it's most profitable to have your customers keep repurchasing the same product over and over, regardless of the waste and environmental impact. Blatant examples of this waste are cars, cell phones, computers, and plastics. But it's important to note, this type of waste is ubiquitous. The good news about the market and the myriad of other institutions that are holding us back is that even if we, the public, wanted them to survive, they can't. They're unsustainable by their very designs, and they're becoming irrelevant in the face of emerging technology and modern understandings. The bad news is they're so unsustainable that it's to the point where they could possibly take modern civilization as we know it down with them as they demise. Right now, we are all in the sinking ship of these passing institutions, and the question is, are we going to sink with them? Are we just going to wait until there's no more fresh water? Are we just going to wait until the richest 1% owns 99% of the wealth? And are we just going to wait until we run out of oil, the energy and blood of everything that makes the modern world modern?
The astronomer Carl Sagan once asked, "Who speaks for the Earth?" Soon the Earth may speak for itself through sense. What is sense? Sense is an acronym for Central Nervous System for the Earth, which is a technology being developed by Hewlett-Packard and others. The purpose of this technology is to create a real-time monitoring system for natural resources, weather, and many other uses. What if we were able to predict major earthquakes in time to evacuate people and bring them to safety? That's exactly what scientists are trying to do. One of the most positive and forward-thinking developments on this matter occurred at the annual meeting of the European Geophysicists Union held this last April in Vienna. Coordinated teams of scientists from around the world presented their research on detecting various warning signs. Taken as a whole, this work could very well make predicting earthquakes in advance a reality. The conference, which was attended by over 10,000 scientists from 96 countries, had a sense of unusual urgency in light of the recent series of earthquakes that struck Japan and the expectation of new great earthquakes originating from what's called the Pacific Ring of Fire. Some theories on how we will be able to make these predictions include technologies that are already in use today, such as using satellites and ground monitoring stations. Others theorize we could monitor the relationship between solar activity and the geomagnetic processes that occur prior to earthquakes happening. There's a fair chance that these geophysicists themselves are in the process of what we previously thought was impossible. Consider the vast flood damage that took place back in spring in the Mississippi, Missouri, Ohio basin, the third largest drainage basin in the world. Then consider Hurricane Irene and the earthquakes that took place on the East Coast. What other measures needed to forecast, mitigate the effect of, and recover from such an event? In the U.S., our abilities to do these things have been deteriorating for years, and for no good reason. The National Earthquake Hazards Reduction Program, also known as NERP, created by Congress in 1977, has been hobbled for years by consistent underfunding, the removal of earthquake forecasting from its original mandate, and the fact that NASA has never been part of it, haven't helped. They were created by Congress to coordinate agencies and to implement an earthquake prediction system. Under the proposed 2012 budget, NERP's funding is slated to fall to $121.9 million, This contrasts to the $330 million per year which the Earthquake Engineering Research Institute estimated was needed to stimulate measurable improvement in the nation's resilience to earthquakes. This is NASA's Earth-Observing Fleet of Satellites, a program comprising of a series of satellite missions using various scanners and instruments in Earth's orbit, designed for long-term global observations of land, surface, biosphere, atmospheric, and oceanic conditions. They go by the name of Terra, Aqua, Landsat, and Grace, to name a few. Using Landsat's data, we can track geological trends and key resources to support the world's population, which is expected to reach 8 billion in as early as 2025. We will need these advanced tools to collect information for monitoring and protecting our crucial resources.
Let's play Jeopardy.
What is shoe?
You are right.
What is Maxwell's silver hammer?
Yes.
What is stick?
Stick is right.
Who is Jude?
Yes.
Who is Michael Phelps?
Yes.
What is Event Horizon?
Yes.
What is The Last Judgment?
Correct.
Who is Lady Madonna?
Correct.
Who is Hyde?
Hyde, yes. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, either one acceptable. You're now in the lead with 1,400. Go again.
Beatles people for 200.
Enough with the fun and games. Watson is going to work. IBM's supercomputer system, best known for trouncing the world's best Jeopardy players on TV and recently defeating students at MIT, is being tapped by one of the nation's largest health insurers to help diagnose medical problems and authorize treatments. WellPoint Inc., which has 34.2 million members, will integrate Watson's lightning speed and deep healthcare database into its existing patient information, helping it choose among treatment options and medicines. The WellPoint application will combine data from 3 sources: a patient's chart and electronic records, the insurance company's historical records, and Watson's huge library of textbooks and medical journals. IBM says the computer can then sift through it all and answer a question in moments, providing several possible diagnoses or treatments, ranked in the order of the computer's confidence, along with the basis for its answers. WellPoint's officials claim that in a matter of seconds, doctors will have patients' up-to-date records displayed with treatment options based on the patient's medical needs and history. The WellPoint application would likely be accessed from an ordinary computer or a handheld device. A pilot program is being set to be rolled out early next year at several cancer centers, medical schools, and oncology practices. Over the last few years, electric cars have gone from a fringe idea to the mainstream. Ford, Nissan, General Motors, Chevy, Toyota, and Honda all have new electric models coming out. But there are still some hurdles to overcome before fully electric cars will start selling big. For starters, there's that power cable problem. However, Witricity, a small startup outside of Boston, thinks one way to make electric cars more attractive to consumers is to bypass power cables entirely. They contend that there will not be widespread adoption of electric vehicles if you have to plug them in. And so this is where wireless electricity will be quite helpful. Witricity envisions a scenario where you drive home, you walk away from your car, and it just charges. Or you pull into a parking garage labeled "Electric Vehicles Park Here." You park there and walk away knowing that your car will be charged. And this company is developing a system that can do just that. Witricity has developed the ability to provide electrical energy to remote objects without wires, using oscillating magnetic fields. It's possible because electricity and magnetism are related. Running an electric current through a coil wire creates a magnetic field. Put a second coil wire in that field and it creates electricity. Using this concept, Witricity has developed devices that create oscillating electric fields, allowing devices in the vicinity to be powered. The group hopes to get its developments into the mainstream, but they attribute the delay in developing their wireless power technology to limitations of well-known physical laws and simple lack of consumer demand. But just because electricity's developments have their physical limitations doesn't mean there aren't other options for powering electric cars. Designer Feng Chung Tsai is envisioning magnetic highways, harvesting kinetic energy. He proposes using the kinetic energy from speeding cars to change a magnetic field to generate electricity. The system could be easily installed in existing cars and could pave the way towards a self-sufficiency energy grid. This is a principal system used for maglev rail and subway and could also work hand in hand with a smart grid. Perhaps before long, every car would just come wireless capable, the same as many of the common electronics do today. Less than 15 years ago, the wireless feature on laptops had to be purchased, while today it's standard. What if 15 years from now, the same becomes true for our vehicles? The technologies we've highlighted in this presentation reflect a single attribute of a system within the resource-based economic model. You've seen each one of them in isolation, meaning detached from one another. From our perspective, they shouldn't be. The HP nervous system and weather geological features represents a method of how we possibly could survey the entire planet. We can analyze what's going on and be provided with a complete inventory and make adjustments and corrections when needed. Our feature on Watson allowed us to glimpse at what is termed AI, or artificial intelligence. Cybernation is the marriage of computers to production methods. It is what allowed us to unleash the outflow of goods and services never before experienced. The way we conduct human affairs is being challenged by the use of computers that simulate human decision-making and hypothesis testing along with self-correction. Our wireless electricity segment gave us insight into developments of wireless electrical vehicles. We highlighted two developments. First, a method of charging electrical vehicles without the use of a cable or cord. Second, the use of kinetic energy to create a weak field that resonates with a coil on the car to transfer power, and also utilizes the existing smart grid that's being installed throughout the country. The ideal is to merge these technologies. The days of electric cars not being able to compete with the internal combustion engine technology are slowly coming to a close. In society, we've viewed governments, politicians, and corporations as the guiding institutions responsible for the quality of our lives. This, of course, has worked, but only to a certain extent. The application of the scientific method for social concern is an oft-repeated mantra for the basis of social operation in what we term as a resource-based economic model. What this means is we advocate science as a methodology for all social decisions. We advocate a resource-based economic model in which science, technology, and information are the guiding principles, not the traditional social conventions, ideologies, money, politics, religions, or any other current institutional establishments. The fact of the matter is that human societies which are dispersed across the globe require resources which are also ununiformly dispersed across the globe. Our current procedure for enabling resource distribution comes in the form of corporations which seek and claim ownership of our earthly resources, which they in turn sell to others in the name of profit. This form of social organization is no longer necessary. We've surpassed a point in our evolution through scientific, technological advance where our management and distribution of natural resources should not be allocated through corporate, political, legislative control. The goal of the Zeitgeist movement is to integrate these technologies into a systems theory of management. The idea that we're trying to convey to you through these concepts is essentially a train of thought which should bring into question what our values are, what they represent, where they come from. When we examine that, we begin to understand that our values are a product of the current culture. So we must begin to shift our values away from opinion. Instead, we must begin to base them on science and objective truth. This has been ZTV Chicago, and we thank you for joining us.